Welcome back to Flight Education. Today we'll be exploring geometry, specifically area and perimeter. Perimeter is, as you may recall, the length of all the sides of a shape. You can think of it as having a field, and if you were to put a fence around the field, the perimeter would be the total length of the fencing. For example, here we have a rectangle with sides 3 yards, 5 yards, 3 yards, and 5 yards. So, to find our perimeter, we would simply add up all of the sides. So 3 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5, and that gets us 16 yards. Remember, it's important that we include the units in our answer so that we know what we're measuring. Now, let's take a look at a slightly different example. What about this rectangle? We're only given two sides, 2 inches and 6 inches. So how can we find the perimeter if we don't know all of the side lengths? Well, to find the perimeter, we need to remember an important property of rectangles, which is that the opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent, or in other words, the opposite sides of the rectangle are the same length. So that means this side is 6 inches, so since this is a rectangle, the opposite side of it is also 6 inches. And the same thing for here. This side is 2 inches, so the opposite side is also 2 inches because we're dealing with a rectangle. So that means we can fill in the blanks here. This is 2 inches and this is 6 inches. So when we add up 2 plus 6 plus 2 plus 6, our answer is 16 inches. And again, we can't forget the units. You can also think of it like adding up two sides that are next to each other and then multiplying it by 2, because we're just adding them together twice. So in this case, we could do 2 times 2 plus 6, or 2 times 8, which is also 16. So both ways work. Now, let's look at another example. So here we have a square, and we're only given one side length. So how are we supposed to figure out the other side lengths? So once again, we have to remember the properties of a square. And one of the main properties of a square is that all sides are congruent, or all sides are the same length. So that means if one side is 5 feet, then all the other sides are also 5 feet. So that means to figure out our perimeter, we can just add up 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, because all of these sides are 5 feet. Or you can think of it as multiplying one side length times 4, because there's 4 sides in a square. So 4 times 5, or 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, is going to give us 20 feet. As you may recall, to find the area of squares or rectangles, we can multiply one side by the side next to it. For example, here we have a rectangle with side lengths 3 and 4 meters. So to find the area, we can simply multiply 3 times 4 to get us an answer of 12 square meters, or 12 meters squared. And remember that we have to use square units, because when we measure area, we measure it in squares, not in line segments like we do perimeter. So we have to show that the units we're using are square meters, meaning that the unit is a square with side length of 1 meter. So what if we have a more complicated shape that looks like this? So this isn't exactly a rectangle, so we can't just multiply two sides next to each other. It's a bit more complicated than that. So if we want to find the area of a shape like this, what we have to do is split it into different parts. So there's a few different ways we could split up this shape. We could either take the area of this and add it to the area of this, or we can take the area of this part and add it to the area of this part. So today let's split it up like this. Find the area of this plus the area of this to give us the total area of the shape. So first we have to figure out what these missing side lengths are, and we can figure it out by looking at the side lengths opposite to it. So here we're not sure what this side length is, but we know that this side is 3 centimeters and this side is 4 centimeters. And we can see that this side plus this side is the same as this side. So 3 plus 4 is 7. That means that this side length is going to be 7 centimeters. And we can do the same thing for this side length. We're not sure what this side length is, but we know that this is 8 centimeters and this is 5 centimeters. So that means that this side length plus this side length has to equal this, right? So 5 plus what will equal 8, or 8 minus 5, and that's going to give you 3. So now that we know those side lengths, we can split up the rectangle like this. So here we have 7 times 5, and then here we have 4 times 3. Then we can just find the area of each of these individual rectangles and then add them up. So we have 5 times 7 plus 3 times 4 to give us a total area of 35 plus 12, which is 47 centimeters squared, or 47 square centimeters. So now we know how to find the area of rectangles and shapes that are made up of rectangles, like the complicated shape we saw in the last example. But what about other shapes, like triangles? Well, let's see. So here we have a rectangle with side lengths 4 yards and 3 yards, and as we know, to find the area, we simply multiply one side length by the side length next to it, 4 times 3, that gives us 12 square yards. Now, what if we were to cut this rectangle in half in a certain way? So here, we have the same rectangle, but what if we sliced it diagonally, like this? Well, since we're cutting it in half like this, the total area of this part of the rectangle, the shaded part, should just be half of this area. So basically this divided by 2. So 4 times 3 divided by 2, which gives us 6 yards squared, or 6 square yards. From there, we can get our generic formula, or the formula that can apply to all triangles for area. So the area of any triangle will be equal to 1/2 times the base times the height. So in this case, the base is just the bottom side. So here it's this side, that's 3 yards. And then the height is the height of the shape, so that's 4 yards. And then we multiply by 1/2, which is the same as dividing by 2. And we saw how when you multiply the base times the height, you get the rectangle, right? But then when you divide by 2, you get the triangle. So let's look at an example of that. So here we have a triangle. Now we can see that the base is 6 inches, or the bottom side is 6 inches long. Then the height, as represented by this dotted line. So remember, the height is the distance from the base to the top corner of the triangle. So this is not the height, because this is a different length than this, since it's diagonal. And obviously this, we can see, is much longer than this, because these are not the height. This is the height. It has to be going straight from the base up to the corner. So if we use our formula, the base is 6, the height is 3, and then we multiply it by 1/2 or divide it by 2. So 6 times 3 is 18. So 18 times 1/2 is the same as 18 divided by 2. That gets us a final answer of 9 square inches. And yeah, that's going to be it for today's lesson. We have some helpful worksheets in the description below for you to practice what you've learned. And there's also a link to our website, which has more worksheets on other subjects. Also, don't forget to subscribe and check out our channel to see more videos like these. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.